So, in the previous video, we saw about structured and unstructured observation. Now, let us see the other kinds of observation. So, we have participant and non-participant observation. So, in a participant observation, the observer becomes a member of the group he or she is observing. So, if I want to observe something on a football ground, I become either a football player or I become an umpire, right. So, if I want to watch a wedding, observe a wedding, I become a part of the wedding population, people who attend the wedding throughout. So, by being with the participants, you can get a lot of first hand experience. So, if I want to study an organization, I join that organization and see how people behave there and how I myself would behave. So, this participant observation can provide a very rich and detailed data and insights, because you are a part of it, and it builds trust with the participants, encouraging an open behavior. But it can lead to the researcher bias, because you are a part of the group, you may get biased either in favor or against the group, and it can be time consuming, because you have to be a part of it and you have to be with the group for a longer time, and the participants can be influenced. Like if I know you are an observer, you are observing me, I may behave differently. So, there also you have a covert observation. That means what? I am a player in the football team, so I am doing some research on football players, but the other players do not know that I am a researcher. That is covert. Then the participants' behavior will not be affected. But then I tell my people, hey buddies, I am playing with you, I am doing some research. So, the participants are aware that they are being observed. So, obviously, in the second case, there is more chance of a respondent bias. They may behave differently because they know they are being observed. So, in non-participant observation, I am not a part of the group. I am standing alone and watching. I go to a store and just watch people. Nobody knows I am doing research. I am watching them. They do not know. Okay. I go to a wedding and watch. So, non-participant. So, I am a child psychologist. I just watch people, children playing. The parents do not know and the children do not know. So, you are minimizing the influence of the participant, because the participants, you are not a part of it, their behavior is more or less natural, how they would naturally behave. And it sort of enables objective observation, because as I told you, when you become a part of the group, you tend to get influenced by the group. You may take a dislike to them, you may take a liking, and you may take some side. So, there is always a chance that the researcher's bias also comes. So, when you are a non-participant, this bias is minimized. But you need, you need to know that you should have the skill. And since you are not participating, you may miss some behavioral issues, interactions. Without interactions, you may not get it. And also there could be a limited depth of understanding as compared to a participant observation. So, see, any method has its own plus and minus, nothing is wholly good. The third classification is called as controlled and uncontrolled. So, name itself tells you controlled observation is where the participants are observed in a controlled environment. So, we can add some instruments or devices for measuring and for standardization. So, such observation has a tendency to supply formalized data upon which generalizations can be built with some degree of assurance. So, controlled observation is used in experiments to test causal hypothesis and infer causality. In general, it is conducted in laboratories. For example, I want to know, let us say, what is the effect of temperature on a person's anxiety levels. So normally whenever they do such experiments, they may do it on people, or they may do it on animals or something. So there you are controlling the environment under which you are observing. So that's called as controlled observation. Uncontrolled is it takes place in the natural setting. Wherever the participants are, you just go and observe. So this is, in uncontrolled, you get a spontaneous picture of the whole thing. So naturalness and completeness will be there. So generally uncontrolled observation is used in exploratory research. I am exploring something, looking at something. So that is where we use, when I want to explore something, obviously I have to explore in a natural environment. In a controlled environment, I don't explore, I only discover, or I try to control the behavior, right. So I don't use any precision instruments, and again subjective interpretation can come into picture. So see here, what are the advantages of observation? Method of observation, whether it's structured, unstructured, observation in general, you can produce large quantities of data, right. So whereas interviewing subjects may provide you more information economically than waiting for the spontaneous occurrence of the situation. So instead of going to a football match, many matches, and looking at observers, I can as well contact football players and give them a questionnaire and take an answer. Maybe that will be faster. That's the meaning of this first comparison. All data obtained from observations are usable, and the observation technique can be stopped or begin at any time. It's under your choice, and it's relatively inexpensive. So disadvantages, you could have a quicker method by using a questionnaire, and it's expensive. Observation is expensive because you need time resource, okay, and limited information. So expensive in terms of time, maybe less expensive in terms of cost. And you can get extensive, you may need to have extensive training if needed to apply the observation method, because we are all not taught to look at subtle, supposing you want to measure anger. Most of us, we think when people are angry, they shout. So that's all I know. When people are angry, they will shout, and I think all people who shout are angry. But there are so many ways people in anger react. Some will just tighten their fists, and some will clench their teeth, and some will just bang on a table, or they'll stamp their foot, so many ways. So I should be trained to catch those nuances. So observation has its own limitations. The second method is interviews. We all know what interviews are about, right? So again, an interview is a qualitative research method. What do you do in an interview? You ask questions and you try to get answers, right? It involves two or more people, and one of them is the interviewer who is asking the questions. So the goal of the interview is to exchange ideas and experiences, extract data on a wide range of topics. And interviews are useful only for qualitative research. Obviously, if I do want to do a quantitative or an experimental research, I can't use interviews. So again, like observation, there are different types I can conduct the interview. The first is the structured interview. So generally it is a close-ended, we call them as a close-ended question. That means the candidate answers with a yes or no. Are you expecting a salary of more than 10 lakhs per annum? Yes, no. Okay. And do you like to work in the IT industry? Yes, no. Are you ready to work night shifts? Yes, no. So these are close-ended questions. And generally in a structured interview, the interviewer asks everybody the same set of questions. Here, don't think of interview for a job, interview to collect data. Are you married? Yes, no. Do you have children? Yes, no. Right? Is your income more than 10 lakhs per annum? Yes, no. So that is the meaning of an interview, same set of questions. So the researcher has a standard format and proceeds with the interview. Interview, again I repeat, is not for a job. We are not using interview in that sense. interview we are using for a face-to-face interaction between the researcher and the participant and the respondent. What are your strengths, and it need not be close-ended, it could be descriptive also. What are your strengths and weaknesses? What are your career goals? How open are you to criticism? What do you do when you are stressed? You have an issue with your increment, will you put it forth to HR? So these are some close-ended, they are open-ended questions. So it could be either close-ended or open-ended. So here, by asking a set of questions in a set order, you can get to see patterns in responses, and you can easily compare responses from different participants. Okay. So this structured interview sort of mitigates some bias, but of course you have limited scope and flexibility because it has got a structure, you don't deviate from that. Unstructured is the reverse, it is spontaneous. I see somebody driving a car. I actually go to interview them on their marital status or something. I see them driving a car and I say, do you like expensive cars? Spontaneously. So by looking at the participant, I spontaneously question them. This could also be prior to my structured interview, where I am trying to build some sort of a rapport with my respondent. The researcher and the respondent are building a rapport. Of course, it is very flexible, but bias is likely to keep in because you can ask some, we call that as leading questions. Like you try to make the respondent answer in the way you want. But this is, unstructured is good provided you have the skill for it, right? Otherwise, it's not very easy for people to just go and talk to somebody and interview them. You will go blank. So normally most interviews are structured. Semi-structured is, it's a combination. It's a combination of both structured and unstructured. So some you structure some questions, and on the spot spontaneously you may deviate and ask some more questions. Then we have a personal interview. So personal interview is a one-on-one interview. So this is very good for researchers who want to talk directly to the individuals. It's a one-on-one to answer the whatever questions, research questions you have. So because it is a face-to-face interaction, the response will be very high as compared to other methods we will see, right? So this is called as a personal interview. The name itself is telling you, a one-on-one interview. It provides very good response, greater opportunity to observe the behavior at close quarters, and it allows the respondent to adapt to questions if they do not understand. They will ask you because you are there in front, na? If you are not in front, they may answer randomly, thinking of how they understand the question. But if you are in front of them, hey, I didn't understand this question, can you just clarify what you mean? And you can ensure in-depth answers to questions. The next is focus group interviews. Focus group is where you bring a group of people together and interview. So anybody at random can answer. So I want to, I'm doing some research on working women. I call 10 working women together and I just say, pose some questions. Again, it is qualitative, and the group's dynamic and body language also you can assess in addition to the answers. And if you do not, you would have seen on the TV also so many such interviews, right, by journalists and TV anchors and all. They just go around interviewing people. They hold the mic together, one after the other. So in fact, a focus group interview can give you ideas for further research, because you know, you have your research participants and they will be discussing something and you can get an idea. So as I told you, all these methods are only for social and behavioral sciences. So such interviews, that is focus group interviews, are used in the development of hypothesis and constitute a major type of their unstructured. You just get people together. So they can provide you with unfiltered feedback, because you know, some people are open to speak in a group than individually. They may not like something. So, see, supposing I don't like the HR manager, okay, and the CEO of the company asks, do you like your HR manager? I may hesitate to say, no, I don't like. But there are 100 employees, and the CEO post, that is group, all are employees, that is the group, focus group. And the CEO says, do you like your HR manager? Many people say, no, no. I am ready to say no. I am not scared. So that is the meaning of unfiltered feedback. Okay. So this is one thing. But if your focus groups are small, it can lead to low validity, because you are only focusing on a small group of people. So your sampling is reduced. So sometimes it may not be helpful, but it is very useful when the topic is exploratory in nature, because it will lead you to avenues to explore. Then you have telephonic interview. The name is telling you what it is. It is interview through a telephone. It could be more truthful because people don't mind speaking the truth over the phone rather than in person. Non-directive interview, I don't directly question the interviewer, but I encourage them to talk. Like a person comes, I say, can you elaborate on how you feel in the company? I have not said anything. The person may say, I am happy with the salary I get, but I am not happy with the leave, the amount of leave I get. I feel our working hours are very long, and I think paternity leave has to be given, right? The HR manager is good, but I have issues with the finance department. So you see, the top person can get feedback, so much of feedback. That is non-directive. That is different from asking directly, do you like your HR? Are you happy with your salary? That is direct. Non-directive is general. Email interview, you have an interview over email. So email, what the advantage of email is, what you can connect large, you can send email to thousands of people at one time and get large amount of information. So advantages of interview methods is you can get a lot of information at depth. Resistance may be overcome by a skilled interviewer. Respondent resistance you can overcome if you are skilled. Personal information you can get. You can control your samples, and you can have a spontaneous response. But disadvantages, it's expensive. No, you have to meet people, talk to them, interview or get together, focus groups, so on. And your bias could creep in because you are looking at a person. How I interview a man may be different from how I interview a woman, because I am a lady, I may have some biases towards women, I may have some prejudice against women, so it's possible. And you can have a respondent bias. It is very time consuming, and respondent may give false information due to overstimulation due to the presence of the interviewer. In a face-to-face interview, in a personal interview, the respondent may even give you a wrong answer because you are there in front. No, I don't want to be truthful. So these are all some of the issues you have. The next is questionnaire. Again, the name tells you, give the people a list of questions. You can send it by post, or you can send it by mail, or you can just hand it over to them, ask them to answer. You can ask them to take an online test or online questionnaire, they can do it. You can send a Google Doc, so many methods are there. So what do you do here? Same thing, you prepare your questions, select your respondents, administer the question, tabulate. So these are all same for all methods, only the method is different. Okay, determine your population, select your respondents, all that is same, only the way you collect the data is different. So what should be the essence of a good questionnaire? Obviously it should be short and simple. Yesterday somebody was telling me that there was some meeting held, okay, and the people were asked to answer some questions, and the questions ran to 3 pages. And she said, ma'am, nobody answered. It was so much of a problem, and we had to tell the organization conducting the meeting why they are not answering, and these people said, we don't want to answer 3 pages. So questionnaire should be short and simple, and it should follow a sequence of questions, generally from easy to difficult. because if the first two questions are only difficult, then people will not even look at the easy one, they will just leave it. So, with a questionnaire, the problem is the respondent may not answer, because you are going to send an email or you are going to send a post, they will not be in front of you, unlike an interview. So, if you pose the difficult questions first, they may get put off and they may not answer. So, the general good practice is put the easy ones first and make it more and more difficult. How do we do an exam? We look at the question paper and all the easy ones we solve first, right? Same way. And avoid too much of technical terms, because common people may not understand it. Too much of jargon. Okay. So, you should provide adequate space for answers in questionnaire. This happens very often. I get, especially banks, I don't know, I get fill in the information, there will be 1 inch, nothing. Write your address, I can't even write the first 2 lines of my address. So, in many government forms, this is an issue, there is no space provided, adequate space. So, you give some space, because you are a researcher, if you want them to write clearly, give proper space. And then you can give directions to fill the questionnaire. Some people get confused, they don't know how to solve it. You say you tick 1 or you grade 1, 2, 3, something, whatever you are expecting. And the physical appearance should be good. If you are using paper, good quality of paper, color, if you are using images, proper images. Sequence must be clear. Avoid leading questions. Leading questions means you are unconsciously telling the reviewer to say yes, to the respondent to say yes or no. That is called as a leading question. Okay. So, try not to do it. And focused, be focused. So, questionnaires are very common, especially in marketing research. See, if you ask a person, how do you feel about, what do you think of our product? And give 2 options, good, bad. There you are not leading, okay. But if you ask the respondent, do you think our product is good? Invariably the respondent will feel like saying yes, because people generally don't like to contradict. That is a leading question. So, you should not ask, you should not try to make them to answer the way you want. So, if you just ask, how do you feel about our product, good, bad, you give option, they will tick correctly. But if you say, do you think our product is good, most often they will feel like saying yes, right. So, if you ask, how does our product compare with some other product, you say better, worse, equal, they will answer truthfully. But if you say, do you think the other product is worse than ours, they may say yes, that is bad. Okay, so don't lead, that is a bad practice. Open-ended questions, as I said, the respondent they can respond, but many people may not know. Like, what is your career goal? That is open-ended. Different people will write different things. What did you like most about our resort? Some may say, I like the food, some may say, I like the ambience, some may say, I like the attitude of the people. It is open-ended. What is close-ended? Did you like our food? Quality of our food? Yes, no, that is close. So, close-ended questions are generally easy for respondents to answer, but you have to frame it so that you get full information. Open-ended questions are more difficult for them to answer, but you can get more information. Then you have self-administered questionnaire. Here all questions are standardized and all the respondents will receive the same questions with identical wording, identical order, identical sequence, no change. What most often we use, like we just prepare a questionnaire and then distribute it. That is called as self-administered. So, it is simple, cost effective and anonymous. You can keep it, you can use for sensitive topics, self-paced, but it is not, questionnaires are in general not suitable for people with limited literacy. They may not know how to answer. Close-ended, are you satisfied with the, yes, these are all examples of close-ended. How satisfied are you with the product? They will tick 1. All these are close-ended. Open-ended, how would you describe your personality? What is your opinion on the HR policies of the company? What changes would you like to see? These are all open-ended, not yes no kind of a answer. So the disadvantage is you will have a low rate of return of the duly filled in questionnaires, because open-ended people may not know what to answer. It can be used only when the respondents are educated and cooperative, and the control over questionnaire may be lost once you have sent it, and there is you can't change the approach after you dispatch the questions. So these are all some problems. You might get some ambiguous replies. The fourth one is schedule. So we are all talking of primary data collection, don't forget that. Okay. The first method we saw was observation. Second method of primary data collection was what was it? Interviews. And the third method was questionnaire, and the fourth method is schedule. It is very similar to questionnaire. The only difference is, instead of the researcher going directly and getting the questionnaire, the schedule is filled by an enumerator who is appointed for the purpose. Because what I do, I make the questionnaire, I hire somebody and say you go to these many people, you go to 100 people and get their answers. That is schedule. Similar to questionnaire. So in a questionnaire, what happens? The questionnaire is directly given to the respondent. In schedule, it is given to the enumerator. Enumerator will go talk to the respondent, get the answers and fill it. Okay. So the advantage is there. Enumerator will explain to the respondent. If they don't understand something in the question, they will explain and they can take it. And the enumerator must be trained. Okay. Something similar to how the government takes the census. They are enumerators actually. They come to your house and they ask you what is your age, how many people are there, do you own a car, do you own a house, right? How many children do you have, what is your annual income, all this we fill. No? If they give us a questionnaire, that's a questionnaire. If they fill it, it's a schedule. So questionnaire is generally sent through email. Schedule is filled by an enumerator or a research worker. It is costly because you have to pay, no? You have to pay the enumerators and the field workers. So schedules are more expensive. Non-response is low because the scheduler directly, the enumerator goes to the respondent. They collect the information, so non-response is not there. But here non-response is high in questionnaire. I get so many surveys and questionnaires on email, I won't even reply. People don't reply. Okay. Then it could be incomplete because they don't understand what questions they don't understand, they will not respond. So it will be incomplete. But here what happens, the enumerator will be there, so they will do it. But it also depends on the honesty of the enumerator. The enumerator should correctly enter whatever the respondent says. So schedule is good, but it's expensive. So all this is about primary data. Okay. So primary data is basically data collection through experiments, data collection through observation, interview, questionnaire and schedule. Secondary data, I told you, data which is already available. Somebody has collected it and analyzed it. So it's already available. So you utilize that data for your research and you see how you can get that data. So you are not having any of the issues you have in collection of primary data, right? So from where do I collect the secondary data? Various publications of central, state and local governments, okay. Publications of foreign organizations, international bodies, subsidiaries, UN reports are there, McKinsey report is there. So many reports are there, you can, World Bank report, all those you can use, they are all secondary data, you can use the data there, they are all authentic. Technical and trade journals, standards, they are all secondary data. Books, magazines, newspapers, journals, whatever you use, publications, and then data collected by banks, by stock exchanges, by industry, by manufacturers. So if you want something to do with processors, just go to Intel or analog devices, look at what processors they have, you can take data. So all this is secondary data, it's already available. So research data prepared, reports prepared by other researchers, scholars available on websites of universities, public records, historical documents, available in museums, libraries, everything. Only thing is, you should be very careful when you use secondary data, because it should be authentic. It should be authentic. So, you ensure whenever you use secondary data, ensure reliability of the data, who collected the data, what were the sources of the data, were they collected using proper models, at what time were they collected. Some data collected 50 years back, if you use it, may no longer be relevant now. The demography, the technology, right, the income, everything has changed. So, it may not even be useful. So, be very careful. When was it collected? Was there any bias by the compiler? Okay. So, what level of accuracy did they desire? Is that accuracy enough for you, or do you need more accurate? So many questions. So, the data should be reliable for your research. And suitability of data, whether it is suitable for your research objective, for your research design under the conditions you want to work, and whether it is adequate, adequacy of the data. Okay. If it is inadequate, means then your research findings will not be reliable, repeatable. Okay. So, how to select the method of data collection? You look at the nature, scope and object of inquiry, whether you want primary or secondary. What is the fund available? I told you, time factor, precision required. So, using all this, you find out which data method you want to use for collection. Then lastly, there is a case study method. So, the case study method is a technique by which individual factor, whether it is an institution or one individual or one organization or one episode in a person's life, is studied. We say, no, take the case study of. So, supposing I am studying Alzheimer's, let us say. So, then I take the case study of an Alzheimer patient, and I go through their whole history, how they were born, when did the Alzheimer starts, what was their life habit, why, and so on. That is called as a case study. So, it is extensively used in sociology and ethnographic research. The name itself tells you, you can find medical research also, sometimes they use case study. The characteristic is the researcher chooses a single unit for study, one unit is studied, right, and the unit is studied extensively. As I said, if I am studying an Alzheimer patient, I will study extensively everything about their life, whether there were some incidents which could have led to that, what was their food habits, where did they live, how were their children, what was their relationship, were they married, everything. And you can understand actually complex interactions within the unit. Again, it is a qualitative approach, okay, and you have to study the behavioral patterns, and it will help you, case studies will help you to, enable generalized knowledges to grow. You can, so these are some advantages of the case study method. You can get in-depth data, it is flexible, low stakes, you can, even with incomplete information, you can try to arrive at some conclusions. You can identify rare cases, you can try to develop theories and so on. Disadvantage is unrepresentative sample. One Alzheimer patient does not represent the whole Alzheimer community. My bias will come into picture, the researcher bias will come into picture. So, there is generalizability is very less, because I am taking only one sample for study. It cannot be replicated, because one sample may be different from another sample, very time consuming, cost also could be expensive. These are some of the drawbacks. Okay. So, I think with this we have come to the end of module 3. You have seen a lot of things in module 3. We have basically covered the issues of sampling, measurement, scaling and data collection. That is a whole lot. So, thank you all. Be with me for the next modules. Thank you.